Hi, and welcome all to this presentation on the Career Pathways Advancement Project. My name is Kelly Haynes, and I am a researcher and evaluator presenting today from the Institute for Community Inclusion, which is called the ICI. I'm here in Boston, Massachusetts, together with my colleague Janet Drudick of Nebraska Vocational Rehabilitation. Janet is the project director of the Career Pathways for Individuals with Disabilities Model Demonstration Grant, which is referred to as the Career Pathways Advancement Project, or CPAP, in Nebraska. And today we will share an overview of the program. We'll discuss the methods and results of the evaluation, and we'll talk about lessons learned and sustainability. At the end, we'll leave our contact information, and we encourage you to reach out to us with any questions or comments. Pass it to you, Janet.
Thank you so much, Kelly, and we are so glad to be here today. As Kelly mentioned, I'm the project director for the CPAP grant. And so we're going to start by telling you a little bit more about the CPAP grant, the vision, the purpose of the grant. Nebraska's grant is the upskill backfill model. It promotes economic self-sufficiency for Nebraska VR clients. The upskill backfill model was identified as a best practice by the Nebraska Governors Association and the Center for Best Practices. It was chosen as the CPAP's vision to promote autonomy, stability, and economic self-sufficiency for individuals with disabilities. The goal is to provide assistance for individuals with disabilities to obtain a single, stable, well-paying job with benefits to replace entry-level jobs currently held to make ends meet. The CPAP project focuses on out-of-high school youth and adults with disabilities. Pause a minute. Okay, there we go. The grant provides for a dual customer approach, developing relationships with businesses to upskill their incumbent workers with disabilities and backfill with someone who has a disability who wants to work within that career pathway. After developing the relationship with the business to help upskill a past successfully closed client, then the goal is to backfill with clients from the regular VR program to help clients enter their career pathway of interest, therefore helping businesses retain their key talent and helping them fill the vacant positions with a qualified candidate with a disability. At the beginning of the grant, 3 career pathways clusters were chosen due to the high demand, high wage occupations. They were information technology, manufacturing, and transportation, distribution, and logistics, or TDL as it is called. The goal was to expand to healthcare into the grant's 3rd year, but a decision was made during the 2nd year to expand into healthcare and also into the pathway of architecture and construction due to the high demand for workers in these areas. In order for individuals to be eligible for CPAP, the grant, they must have a disability and have been a successfully closed VR case from Nebraska VR in one of the 5 career pathways. The CPAP career pathway recruiters contacted successfully closed Nebraska VR clients. A letter was initially sent to them explaining they're eligible for CPAP due to being a successfully closed case and also identifying the staff they worked with at Nebraska VR. This eliminates the concern individuals thought it was a scam when they were initially contacted. The CPAP staff then followed up with a phone call. Staff found they needed to spend additional time up front with the clients in what we call recruitment strategies. Even though the individuals wanted to move forward because it was an opportunity to have part or all of their training paid for, it wasn't the right time due to family and work commitments. Therefore, a decision was made to provide recruitment strategies and allow clients to make an informed choice if training and advancement was feasible. This usually included investigating training programs prior to an application being taken. Because taken into consideration, usually when clients are coming to us for the first time, they've already considered becoming a client or want to know more about VR process. In this particular case with the CPAP grant, we were calling them. So it was much different. They needed more time to process and to see if training was appropriate before application was taken. The grant was originally written for only contacting past successfully closed VR clients in one of the 5 career pathways from the years 2013 to 2015. This was expanded to contact clients closed successfully during 2016 and any clients returning to Nebraska VR who had been closed successfully in one of the 5 career pathways and was asking to advance. A CPAP recruiter also reached out to businesses to determine if they would like to advance their incumbent workers with disabilities, even if they had never worked with Nebraska VR in the past. Each business decided how they wanted to educate and promote the CPAP services to their employees. Typical strategies include presentations at staff meetings, hanging CPAP posters in break rooms, and adding CPAP brochures in paycheck stubs. 2,041 individuals have been contacted thus far, and 16.2% of contacts wanted to move forward with CPAP services. In order for a client to be closed successful, they must obtain a credential and have been working successfully for 90 days. This is a little different than in the regular VR program because they must obtain a credential, and even if they did find a job working 90 days, they would have, if they didn't obtain a credential, we could not close them successfully. Credentials included short-term industrial certifications and post-secondary training, such as obtaining a diploma, associate, bachelor's, master's, and/or PhD. A large number of clients chose to advance through industrial certifications. Many certifications CPAP staff were not originally aware of. However, working with the clients and the businesses helped to identify industrial credentialing not often thought of. For example, we had clients complete short-term training for food processing and safety regulations, with trainings being only 3 days in length and held at the University of Nebraska. Partnering with businesses helped CPAP understand the certifications needed for the various industries. Clients are encouraged to stack credentials to help advance within a career pathway. For example, we had one individual who earned 7 industrial certifications. CPAP participants are offered assistance in covering their transportation costs to attend training or offered a stipend to cover additional training related costs. Participants who choose to receive a stipend receive $250 after attending the first day of class. Upon completion of industrial certification, participants are paid another $250 stipend once a copy of the credential is shared with the career pathway recruiter. Participants training for diploma programs receive $375 stipend after each completed 12 credit hours as identified by the grade transcripts. This was helpful for many of our clients. One in particular indicated they were able to stop working at their part-time job so they could attend school while they had a full-time job. So the stipend gave them the additional resources they needed to be able to do some of those things so that they could advance their training. The graph shows the breakdown of the career pathway clients who were working or had, and I'm going to have Kelly, I'm going to have you forward that if you would. The graph shows the breakdown of the career pathways clients who were working or had been working at time of CPAP application. And you can see here, even though we called a number of clients in each of, many more of these clients in each of these pathways, these were the clients who actually completed a career application for CPAP services. The next was progressive employment. The goal was to advance clients with their same business. We used progressive employment techniques such as informational interviews that were held with the client, their supervisor, and or human resources staff, and preferably CPAP staff, to determine how individuals could advance within the company. If clients don't want to advance within their company, progressive employment activities were used to identify how they might want to advance with their current career pathway, such as through job shadowing, informational interviews, on-the-job evaluations, things like that. The grant was originally written to advance within the same career pathway that the client was closed. However, since many of the clients didn't want to advance in their original pathway, the policy was tweaked so clients could choose to pursue training in an area which they weren't closed or currently working. Dave Kelly was one of the many past clients we called back to see if he would like to advance within his company. Dave completed 7 short-term food processing certificate credentials to be able to advance multiple times throughout the company. Dave tells how the upskill backfill model has benefited him and also his business. Again, helping with the dual customer approach of helping both clients and businesses. So we'll hear from Dave.
So I met David through one of our business account managers in Northeast Nebraska in Norfolk. She introduced me to Dave Kelly at Todd's BBI, and that's kind of how I met him and began our relationship of helping him and his company.
I'm a recovering drug addict. I was a drug addict for 10 years, and then I went to serve 5 years in prison. On my release from prison, I decided it's time to get clean. I went to rehab, and that's what led me to Voc Rehab. I've been clean for the last 10 years. So I first got introduced to CPAP when my CPAP representative gave me a call and asked me if I was interested in advancing my career. So I first started working Voc Rehab about 10 years ago. And they helped me purchase clothes for interviews, work boots for work. They also helped me get the interview that got me my first job, led to where I'm at now.
Todd's and Dave was coming to us to see what we could do in terms of helping him and other employees advance within the company.
So with the help of CPAP, as I've advanced through my positions here, they were able to help us backfill each one of the positions I left. The help of the CPAP grant in the last 5 years and my advancement and them backfilling our positions, we were able to see almost a 500% growth in profit in 5 years, which is phenomenal. This year alone, in 6 months, we have made what we made last year.
Dave was able to just grow, and ever since I met him, he just seems to be really happy where he's at. He knows he's persevered a lot from where he was in the past compared to where he is now, and he just seems to be doing great. I know it's helped him from an advancement standpoint, but also like a wage and salary for him and his family.
Yeah, my 5-year goal is to keep helping Todd progress. I said earlier in the interview, there's multiple lines coming in. We have multiple lines running now. I'd like to see a brand new building. I'd like to see 50 to 100 employees. No, 5 years ago, I would never saw myself here. I thought I was going to be a maintenance rep for the rest of my life. And again, with the help of the CPAP grant and 2 employees that were able to backfill, we were able to take our knowledge that we learned and spread it throughout the company. And now all 27 of my employees are benefited from this. To be honest with you, I wouldn't be where I'm at. I don't know if I would even found a job from the get-go if it wasn't for Voc Rehab. So.
Now we're going to have Kelly talk about the statistical data. IDCI has done a great job for the Nebraska VR in evaluating the grant. So I'm going to turn it over to Kelly.
Thank you, Janet. Yeah, that was a great overview of the program and services, and big thank you to David Kelly for telling that story of his experience with Career Pathways Advancement. I think David is so successful that he really makes it sound so easy. But it will be fun today, I think, to talk a little bit about the evaluation and how we saw it as an independent third-party evaluator. So I was just thinking back to the beginning, and when Nebraska VR brought the ICI on board as the independent evaluators for the model demonstration project, we thought it sounded like a really solid approach. So to the best of our knowledge, it was the first VR agency to try to pilot this upskill backfill model. And the way we understood it in the beginning, it seemed very straightforward. So clients would enter the career pathway in a targeted industry or sector. They'd go to school, attend training in order to obtain a post-secondary credential, and then move up and advance into a new position with higher wages and more employer-provided benefits, in theory. In practice, I think it looked a little more like this. So I'm showing an image of the transit map of the subway system here in Boston, which is known as the T. And what we quickly learned is that with career pathways, in practice, it means that there are multiple entry and exit points. So individuals are at very different points in their careers, and the advancement is not always perfectly linear. We also observe that individuals have different goals. They pursued a number of different credentials, and they often found jobs in new industries or with new employers. So just looking at this, we're thinking, how can we evaluate this program? And the ICI used a two-prong approach. So starting with a formative evaluation, we wanted to document the implementation of the project design. So what you might call the process. This is tracking the development of the model, changes over time, and assessing the use of resources and the progress toward objectives. So the process measures and the evaluation data collection procedures were designed to improve the performance through feedback from periodic assessment. Some of the major process questions included what implementation strategies were most effective in carrying out the upskill backfill approach, what were the challenges and strategies to address those challenges that were encountered during the program implementation, and did the activities operate according to scope, sequence, and timeline. The second prong of the evaluation focused on the summative assessment, or the impact on outcome measures. And the primary objective there was to use multiple data sources, which I'll talk about a little later, and including getting feedback directly from the clients and the businesses that were participating, with the goal in order to report on the model demonstration's progress toward achieving the targeted outcomes. With such a large-scale 5-year model demonstration, for us to carry out the process evaluation, we had to really stay super focused on the project objectives. And I'll run through these, but you see they link up directly to the program services that Janet was describing. So number one was to develop pipelines to recruit participants. As part of this too, we saw the expansion of existing career pathways initiatives, which included the existing Nebraska VR certificate program in some of the trades. And there was also an objective about creating and accessing new career pathways. Nebraska VR and the Career Pathways program also joined a learning collaborative with other state VR agency grantees. There were 4 states in total. And then there was, for each of those model demonstrations, an effort to evaluate this process and outcomes. Over time, through our formative evaluation, we observed a number of additional goals emerging early in the implementation. We saw the Career Pathways team start to refine some of those recruitment procedures based on challenges and opportunities that they identified as they rolled out the project. We saw an effort to troubleshoot some challenges related to the backfill approach. There was a heavy emphasis on business engagement and getting client feedback and that information from businesses to have that exchange to continue to improve the program. We also observed the goals kind of shift in response to clients and what they wanted to achieve. So this is where we saw an expansion beyond the original sectors that were identified to many others. And in doing all of this, we saw how the team in Nebraska was able to really create a roadmap for CPAP sustainability and potential replication in other states. So how did we keep track of all of this? First and foremost, I want to just give a quick shout out, some kudos to the CPAP team. I think they were an evaluator's dream. The team was so meticulous in their data tracking and creating systems to house all of this information. And that resulted in data that, from our point of view, was of extremely high quality, and it was very easy to use. Some of these primary data inputs included a 5-year work plan, a project work plan, which served as the checkpoint for measurable or quantitative objectives. The team also created multiple client and business tracking sheets. And they used a very robust case management system that housed all of the individual client level data. And then the ICI, we also conducted annual surveys of clients and businesses. And finally, to complement all of that, we held monthly or quarterly evaluation meetings with the CPAP team members to talk through the progress that they were making towards each of the objectives. We wanted to kind of get to that granular detail about implementation and process. And I think having those monthly or quarterly meetings, it gave us an important opportunity for the CPAP staff to help the evaluators understand the story behind the numbers. So with all of these data inputs and that two-pronged approach that I described to the evaluation, we think we allowed for a very comprehensive documentation of the program. Shifting gears a bit to the findings, just very briefly on the formative evaluation, I wanted to offer some general observations. Overall, I think it's important to note that the CPAP model demonstration was an extremely well-run project. I think with any large-scale pilot like this, there's going to be challenges along the way, and Janet will describe some of those lessons learned later. But overall, the CPAP program met or exceeded the objectives that were established for the project implementation. I think overall the program adhered to the sequence and timelines in the work plan. And I mentioned before too that the scope was broadened, I think, but that was through expanding the objective. So it was broadened to include additional recruitment pipelines, for example, by recruiting incumbent workers, partnering businesses who may have disabilities, and through identifying new targeted career clusters by engaging so many businesses as partners. These are all things that we think will have a lasting impact for workers with disabilities in Nebraska. Now we can talk about the numbers. I'm going to present the findings from the impact analysis, and we've organized that by the Government Performance and Reporting Act, the GEPRA measures that were specified for this model demonstration. Then I will share results from a supplementary comparison group study that we conducted, and then we'll share more about the customer experience. So just a quick recap of the GEPRA measures, the targeted outcomes that the Rehabilitation Services Administration, the project funder, had determined for the grantees. It was to increase the number of distinct career pathways accessed or created, to increase the number of individuals who achieved competitive integrated employment, and to increase the average weekly wage and the employer provided benefits received. So beginning with that first GEPRA measure, over the course of the grant, over 170 employers in 5 targeted industry sectors were engaged by the Career Pathways recruiters. As I mentioned earlier, there were multiple entry and exit points for clients who were seeking to advance, but that common experience was the engagement in upskilling through training and education to earn credentials. And there were a total of 191 credentials earned so far by CPAP clients. And these credentials are very diverse, but this was a critical piece of that upward mobility. CPAP accessed or created career pathways in a range of high demand industries and career clusters. And there were so many customers who used CPAP to build on their past experience or to leapfrog over into a different pathway, which making a change for the better ultimately. But we observed the grant access 36 different career pathways. For that second GEPRA measure, as Janet mentioned before, over 2,000 past VR clients were contacted to participate. And of them, 333 individuals opted in, they applied, they were found eligible to receive services. 118 of those individuals have successfully obtained competitive integrated employment to date. There's an important qualifier here that the program is still actively serving a number of clients, as we're entering into the final 6 months of the project period, during which the team is anticipating approximately 73 additional successful closures prior to March 2021, which will bring that total number of individuals successfully employed to date up to almost 200. Next, we want to give more detail about what happened to those 118 individuals that successfully closed into competitive integrated employment. We want to break that down a little bit. So what were their wages at the time of application? So this is when they arrived at the CPAP program. And as a reminder, most of these individuals were working. So they were either past VR clients or incumbent workers. So they're coming into CPAP with wages around $500 a week as a median. And when we counted their employer provided benefits, so this is measured by just a count from 0 to 5, whether or not the individual had health insurance, sick time, vacation, retirement, or other employer provided benefits. Most individuals at the time of application to CPAP had maybe one of those benefits when they first applied. So we collect these same data points again at the time of successful case closure from the CPAP program, when the person has obtained a credential and competitive integrated employment. And what we observed is a substantial increase in wages and benefits. The individuals successfully completing the program were reporting weekly wages around $800, which is approximately a $300 increase per week. And on top of that, they were increasing their number of employer provided benefits, in most cases by 2 or more. This was really a big change in the number of people with fully benefited positions. So some of the highlights here, the weekly wages increased for 98%, virtually all of the CPAP participants that achieved competitive integrated employment. 73% of those clients had increased the total number of employer provided benefits received. And there's an important footnote we added here to say that only 5 participants closed into jobs with no benefits. But you also have to keep in mind that many people who did not have an increase in benefits, it was because they already had benefits to start and they maintained those benefits. So we observed no net change for some of these people, but overall for the group, there was an observable increase on average. The next step for the evaluation was to find out if these differences between the groups were statistically significant. So with some encouragement from the project officer, we adapted a matched comparison group approach. And this was really our best effort to determine how CPAP participants fared when they were compared with individuals who were served in Nebraska's regular VR program. Through a series of steps, we drew a comparison group, starting first with the pool of VR cases that had closed successfully in the 5 targeted career clusters during the grant period, and then narrowing that down so that the comparison group looked as much like the group of people served in the CPAP program as possible. So we wanted to make sure that we were selecting people who had jobs in similar career clusters, that they were served by Nebraska VR at a similar time frame. And then probably most importantly, we wanted to look at only individuals who were working or had some earnings at the time that they came to VR. Because as you recall, the design of CPAP was to advance individuals who were already working and move people up. So then we matched on some basic demographic characteristics, including level of education, age, ethnicity, gender. And to carry this out, we used a tool that Mathematica Policy Research has made freely available to VR programs and evaluators in the field. That's called the VR Program Evaluation Coach tool. And I included a hyperlink here if anyone wants to take a closer look. But that program helped us to identify a matched comparison group of 95 non-CPAP cases. Here are the key findings. When comparing outcomes, the results indicate that the CPAP intervention had the intended effect on both wages and employer-provided benefits. So the difference that we had observed descriptively is consistent with these findings. The non-CPAP cases earned median weekly wages of about $560. The average was a bit higher at $583, compared to the CPAP median wages of $780 a week, with an average of $899. The point estimate, which is our best guess of the effect of the CPAP intervention on weekly earnings, is $311 per week. The point estimate of the effect of the CPAP intervention on employer-provided benefits is that increase of 1.94, so almost 2 additional employer-provided benefits. Just a quick couple of thoughts before I move on. I think as a model demonstration, as I said before, this pilot of the upskill backfill approach was the first that we know of a VR program. And although these weekly wages and employer-provided benefits earned by the group of CPAP participants who were successful, they're very impressive. But it's been a challenge for us to put some of these outcomes into context. Even using a solid approach like a matched comparison group, there are a number of limitations to that, and we recognize that. I think because the goal of the CPAP program was advancement, which is in many ways very different from the typical goal of a regular VR program or your typical client seeking VR services. So I think that adds to some of the limitations of a comparison group study, but we really thought it was important to offer this estimation of the program impact. So lastly, to bring the whole program evaluation together, we also looked at the customer satisfaction of both the job seekers or workers and the businesses. So we conducted an annual survey to get feedback about the services received by participants. And these surveys had a pretty good response rate for clients. It was a bit lower for businesses. But in this most recent round, we had a 56% response rate for clients, which is pretty high for a VR customer survey. And we had asked these individuals about some of their CPAP services. So how the CPAP team helped talk to their employer, how they were supported going back to school or doing other training. And overall, participants consistently reported high levels of satisfaction. So 92% had reported satisfaction with their CPAP services. Included a couple of quotes here just to demonstrate that satisfaction. One employee said, "It is giving me the opportunity to grow and reach the next step in my career for advancement. It's definitely like a big brother or sister helping pull me up to a new level in my career. If it wasn't for this opportunity, I don't know if or when I would have had the opportunity to advance." On the business side, we also got some great feedback. So one employer wrote, "CPAP has helped many train for a career on a short-term basis, which has led them to better paying jobs, higher self-esteem, and professionals in our workforce, which we greatly need." So with that, I will pass it back to Janet to talk about things that we have learned.
Thank you so much, Kelly. I really appreciate that. And we really have appreciated all the work ICI and Kelly and her staff have provided. It has been amazing to see and to help us with the quarterly reports and things like that. So it has been great information to help us evaluate our program. We do want to talk about the things we've learned. We've learned a lot of different things, but when we contacted past successfully closed clients using the contact information from the previous VR case file, since we live in such a mobile society, this information we found was often no longer current, making it difficult and sometimes impossible to reach clients. So we're really encouraging our own staff now as we close cases to make sure that information is updated. So if we need to go back and contact clients, that we have email addresses and updated phone numbers and some contact information for people who might be in their support network. So we're encouraging that. It appears the amount of time from previous case closure impacts if the individual can be reached or if they have an interest in upskilling. The longer the case had been closed, it appeared the less chance the individual wanted to upskill. We also noticed that individuals from urban areas are more likely to advance. The reason seems to be additional training programs in urban areas, less of a commute for training, and additional job opportunities after upskilling. Online courses are always explored for both rural and urban individuals who provide flexibility for training due to clients working full-time. So that was always an issue, is helping clients look at, do they have the computer requirements, things like that, the technology in order to take online classes as well. Many clients report they may have never considered going back to school without CPAP support. Some adults attended training in their younger years with no success, so was fearful of starting the program again. Many older adults hadn't attended training with online courses or technology, which was an issue. We had clients contacting CPAP staff wanting to discontinue training after the first week because they just felt like they weren't going to be able to succeed. Staff really stepped up, provided the emotional support they needed. I don't think we had anyone that dropped out after the first couple of weeks because they were nervous about their program. So feel really good about that. But it was really that emotional support that a lot of the people need, that can I really do this now that I have family commitments, I'm working full-time, things like that. Staff also found there was a disconnect between what businesses indicate and what employees and clients think. In Nebraska, prior to COVID-19, we had approximately a 3% unemployment rate. Businesses are indicating, I want to hire individuals who can do the job, will come to work, and I could care less if they have a disability or not. I want someone able to perform the duties. Yet, when we asked staff about asking individuals if we could contact their business regarding upskilling them, they didn't want their business to know they had a disability. If a VR originally placed the person with the business, they were usually open to having staff contact the business. It also appeared in the more rural areas, individuals may be less likely to allow CPAP staff to talk to the business. There were concerns that not only the HR or the supervisor may find out about the disability, but rumors may spread and to their coworkers. This was especially a concern for individuals who have a diagnosis of mental illness. When contacting businesses regarding upskilling their incumbent workers, companies having more physical labor positions didn't think individuals with disabilities could perform the duties. Many HR directors and supervisors didn't know their employers had disabilities, so that was the issues. Some employees self-identified to the business so the employee could upskill through training with CPAP. Businesses soon realized individuals with disabilities could be successful working at their business because they were already one of their employees. Many businesses commented they would have never considered their employees to be eligible for VR services. This opened the door for future discussions regarding hiring individuals with disabilities, providing companies with disability awareness and etiquette training, and additional resources they asked for. CPAP staff asked clients if their businesses offered educational benefits. Many clients didn't know and needed to follow up with their employer. Parts of informed choice is educating clients on what additional benefits through their business are available currently or in the future, even if they're not working through CPAP or Nebraska VR, what opportunities are available through advancement and training opportunities. It appears when contacting past VR clients, many reports coming to VR for the first time need to obtain a job. They need to be a job that they can perform with their functional limitations and can meet their immediate financial needs. When calling past successfully closed clients, they have now gained work maturity and are ready to pursue a career. Experience working with clients who want to advance would indicate clients who would benefit from learning about career pathways when initially coming to VR. Career Pathways allows for many entrance and exit points, as Kelly indicated, and various training opportunities. Exploring and pursuing career pathway options, even while clients are needing a job to meet financial needs, are important. Training could be while the person is working and could be through on-the-job training or finding avenues to pursue academic training. It's important to help clients find employment where they can begin working within a career pathway of interest and know they have opportunities to advance throughout their employment life. It is also beneficial to work with business partners to help clients obtain those positions that provide for high wage and benefits so our clients can be economically self-sufficient as soon as possible. As stated previously, some clients didn't want us to contact their businesses because they didn't want management to know they had a disability. This was more of an impact on the grant than we would originally thought when we wrote the grant. This impacted the grant upskill backfill model and having less clients being backfilled because clients did not want us to contact their employer, which, as remember, employers didn't seem to have concerns if the person had a disability, but yet the clients didn't want us to be contacting them. So that's a real discrepancy that we need to continue to work on. The second barrier was in December 2017, Nebraska VR went into order selection and applications and eligibilities were completed, but clients then went on a waiting list. Career planning was not provided and IPEs written until after the clients were removed from the waiting list. We anticipated we could backfill with Nebraska VR clients, but having clients on the waiting list decreased the number of clients CPAP could backfill. During the fiscal year, Nebraska VR staff will be trained on the Career Pathways model, so Career Pathways will be an integral part of Nebraska's VR employment services and planning with job seekers. Training will begin at the Nebraska VR Staff Conference in May 2020. Nebraska VR will sustain this training through their program director's continual work with VR staff once the CPID grant is completed. Nebraska VR has the option of hiring CPAP staff to help integrate the Career Pathways model into VR. The expertise the Career Pathway recruiters gain through working with the CPID grant will help infuse their knowledge of career pathways within the Nebraska VR agency. We contracted with ICI to develop a career pathway toolkit that was between Virginia and Nebraska CPID. This was developed and posted on the explore.vr.org website. So I encourage you to take a look at that. The Nebraska legacy of the grant is economic self-sufficiency for individuals with disabilities. The goal of the grant was to determine if past successfully closed clients were contacted to upskill within their career pathway. Could they have more autonomy, stability, and be economically self-sufficient? Nebraska knew VR has the statutory authority to work with individuals with disabilities in advancing in their careers, but found VR agencies may not consistently spend their funding on advancing individuals who are already working. The Nebraska CPID demonstration demonstrated individuals with disabilities can earn a livable wage and benefits if the necessary supports and training are provided through advancement opportunities. This is a list of the CPAP website link for the Career Pathways Toolkit, as well as videos and podcasts completed with clients. We encourage you to look at the resources if you have additional questions. And then lastly, if you guys do have, this is the end of our presentation for Kelly and I, but if you have questions or comments or thoughts, we really encourage you to reach out to us. We've been excited about the CPAP program and what we've been able to do here in Nebraska. And if there's anything that we can do to help other states, we always want to be able to do that. I'm going to turn it over to Kelly in case she has other comments.
No, I think you said it, Janet. This was a great opportunity to really take all of the hard work over the past 5 years plus and try to condense it down into one presentation. So as Janet said, we encourage you to reach out to us. Any questions about the results or any evaluation questions can be directed towards me, and I would love to engage in that dialogue. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.